that we have seen.
Have you had opportunities, because I've been down there and I've seen this with you guys, and you have the stunt doubles on hand to do extreme stuff, but you want to do as much as you can. Have you had people, like producer, be like, no, you're not, I'm sorry, you're not doing this? Like, there are insurance reasons, we need you healthy, we can't get you get hurt, when they make someone else step in for you?
Yeah, sometimes that does happen. I'm thinking the funny thing is that it's in the most benign stunts that I end up hurting myself. So like running up to this platform, there was a little bit of a divot in the ground, and I'm like running and holding this huge rifle and feeling really badass, and then I trip and twist my ankle, and I was like, no, I'm a professional, really. Yeah, so it's sort of in those moments. But that setup was like we were calling that the Mission Impossible of, because there's this and then there's Glenn's. You know, as soon as you think somebody's safe, something else terrible is. It's almost like a theme.
Right, absolutely. I've noticed that over the past 6.5 years. Laura, in the first half of season 6, it was interesting because you didn't really get to work a lot with some of the sort of OGs. The character's been around a long time. So what was that like, sort of not being around shooting day-to-day with Norman and Steven and Andy and some of those guys?
Yeah, it's been an interesting... the show, the way Scott designs the show, it's like we have a half season that will change pace and change style in the second half. We sort of divide the seasons like that. And it's when we get to the second half of this season, there's so much of the group together again that it's always very gratifying because you've sort of explored different avenues. But yeah, so in short, Maggie has she has a lot to do with Deanna and with Rick on their own, and learns a lot, which ends up applying to the second half of the season. So it's like we build the appetite for seeing people back together again, and then also we have 2 really badass episodes where I get to work with some of the OGs that I've never really worked that much with before. I don't know if you were there. What episode were you there during?
I was there for 10.
10.
Yeah,
no, it wasn't for that one.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a secret to everybody here. Yeah, but...
Let me take you in my time traveling DeLorean for a minute. I hope you don't get car sick traveling through the space-time continuum, Lauren. But I want to take you back for a little bit, because you've been on the show for a long time now. You're one of the principal characters. But you weren't there in season 1. So you show up in season 2 at the farm. What was it like for you? Because The Walking Dead was this really huge surprise hit in season 1, and now you're the new kid. And you come in season 2. I'm just curious what that was like for you then joining the show.
After Maggie started on the show, after that, nothing that was written were people... nobody's audition scenes were actually the scenes that were in the show. And Frank had written the entire season 2, like, in advance. And so when we got there, we read the entire season of scripts. But I had never seen the show. I just read these 2 scenes, loved them, was very invested in this character. And then watched the 6 episodes of the first season on the way over. And then I got extremely nervous because I was like, oh God, now I'm a fan. I'm not going to be cool in front of these people. It's going to be so hard. And so that was when I really sort of had the experience of, holy shit.
Who was the first person you sort of made a connection with on that set? There were some other new people as well that showed up in season 2. Obviously, the whole Green family. Yeah. Was it one of them, or was it one of the people that had been in season 1?
No, it was Steven and Sarah Wayne Callies were the first people I hung out with when I got there. We went for Korean barbecue, and it was July or June or July, and it was already baking hot, and I was coming from England, and all I had were flannel shirts and jeans. And the first thing Sarah said was, you need to go to American Apparel and buy a lot of T-shirts. And then Stephen and I went and had a really nice... I had a lot of lunches, it seems like, in the beginning. Yeah, and just got out there and had... it was crazy. It was crazy in the beginning because it was everybody all together in everything. And so it was... Yeah.
What about I've talked to Norman Reedus, and he tells me when new people come in, sometimes, like, I'm the guy in the corner, grumble, like it takes him a little while to warm up to people. Maybe he's a little shy with new people. I don't know. What was he like at first?
God, what was Norman like? Everybody was just really chill. We were out there on the farm in the sun a lot, and it's a very bonding experience. I think that he was just sort of... I don't know, everybody was cool. And you know what was the nicest thing? And I've seen Andy do this for every single person that joins the show. He just like calls them, makes sure that they have his phone number. There's nothing intimidating about the people that you work with. There's the most intimidating factor is that you know it's a great show when you come onto it and you want to do your best work and you want to do a really, really good job. But everybody there makes sure that you know this is a team and they're there at the other end of the phone or with you on set. And Andy did that. He's like, what do you need? Do you have any questions? Call me anytime, da 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 da. And he's done that to every single person that's come onto the cast. And it's been across the board, everybody comments. I have never felt so welcomed. And people always comment that, like, you see a show in season 5, season 6, and as we go into season 7, like, it's not normal for it to still feel so normal, I guess. And not to say it's, you know what I mean, but, you know, Andy and Norman and Steven and all the OGs are a huge part to play in how grounded.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, it is grounded. And it's interesting, too, because people think, all right, this is the highest rated show on TV. And people think it's going to be this very glamorous situation. It's not glamorous. There's nothing glamorous about The Walking Dead. Trust me, if you guys have seen those sets that they work on, like that dank, dark prison and everything, and the Atlanta heat, I mean, it's rewarding work. I know you guys love it, but it's hard. Give people a sense of what it's like when you guys are filming down there in July, in outside of Atlanta, Georgia, and it's 100 degrees, and you're doing these action scenes in a lot of clothes and a lot of carrying around ammunition. It's not easy.
Yeah, I think that, you know, a typical scenario on The Walking Dead is that it's obviously very, very hot, and the weapons that we're using are all real guns and weapons, and sometimes you'll have 2 on you, and then you'll have like a hip holster, and you'll be running and exhausted and crazy, and by the time you go home you don't even feel like showering, and you've had just, you know, we start usually at 4:00 on a Monday and you kind of work through the week that way. And I think that we have such a badass crew. I mean, we're hustling with guns, they're hustling with camera and with equipment everywhere, and we're just, there's really no easy scenes, there's really no easy whether that be physically or emotionally. You guys know, you watch the show. It's not easy to go to those places as a viewer either. And yeah.
Well, one of the most disgusting sets of many, and that's saying something, we saw in this past half season so far, the beginning of season 6, and we'll watch a clip of it now. You're about to see some hardcore emoting from Lauren Cohan here, ladies and gentlemen. Hardcore acting is about to happen. This is a scene of her with Ross Marquand, who plays Aaron, and they're in the sewer. You guys are trying to get out of Alexandria to check on Glenn. And let's talk a little bit about this scene, but first let's take a look at it. Cohan, ladies and gentlemen, that's how you act in a sewer. That's how you do it.
Sewer acting 101.
It's amazing. So we heard that was the big revelation that Maggie is pregnant. How is a pregnant Maggie different from a pre-pregnant Maggie? How is she going to change as a result of this?
Yeah, I think that some of the major things that change is just the sort of impulsive actions that she's not going to take. Like, she doesn't go out with Glenn because he doesn't want her to, and obviously that has its own repercussions because now, as we all know, we've had this like horrible isn't he alive, and I think that it's about being more responsible. But overall, her drive and where it goes for the rest of the season for safety and for security is made much more feisty and strong because of the pregnancy. So there are other risks that she takes and other ways that she sort of puts herself out there at the insistence of Rick and upon the lessons of Deanna to make sure that they find somewhere safe to be. Because as I would imagine, as a mother, and as I imagine that she would feel, you don't take no for an answer when you are seeking safety. And that's been a really fun thing to explore and to play with a pregnancy. I think overall we know this character and the Maggie-Glenn relationship to be one of perseverance and hope, and that's actually been such a cool thing because the pregnancy has no regrets. I mean, there's safe and less safe choices, but if you don't create, and that's what we sort of explored in another season when they thought they might be pregnant, if you don't create another generation and you don't keep pushing forward, then what is inspiring you to protect and to live and to continue? So on that level, it feels like a pretty good choice. A little scary.
That's a great scene, and it gets me wondering. It's not like you have to put together an acting reel anymore, but if you did, is there one scene from your time on The Walking Dead that you really are proud of or that you hold dear, like a scene that really meant a lot to you and you worked really hard on and you just loved the results? If you had to pick one scene like that out, what would it be?
My favorite scene in The Walking Dead is actually Maggie listening to Herschel when the whole group has the flu and he goes into the prison and he says, you take a drink of water, you risk your life. You go outside, you risk your life. You just have to decide what you're risking it for. And that scene, to me, it's like, it's the absolute epitome of what these characters strive for and who they are and what the show is. And so my favorite scenes in this are every time I'm listening to Scott Wilson. That's literally my favorite times of the show. But it's good. I mean, the biggest peaks or any time that a character wants to do something that they can't do and sort of facing that realization. And so, sort of maneuvering.
It's interesting you say listening because watching you guys on set, a lot of other sets, other actors, if the camera's not on them, they'll kind of check out. You know what I mean? And not really give their full performance. But you guys always do that. And it's really sort of fascinating to watch. I like watching guys work.
It's so nice to be. That's actually going back to the beginning and joining the show and starting on it. It was the biggest pleasure to be there because those first episodes are when Carl's shot and we're running into the house and the whole Green family is just sort of reacting to this father carrying his son in, and Andy's running across this giant field, carrying a real person. He's not carrying a dummy. I mean, he's like booking across this field. And the entire first couple of episodes are just reeling and reacting to this huge trauma. And it's like, in so many ways, it's just no acting required. You get to be in a room with a bunch of invested, badass people, and I just like, it's really, really fun. It's like it's the closest to live theater that I've experienced in a television scenario, and so I'm glad. Thanks.
Guys, can we talk about Lauren Cohan's new hair? Can we talk about the haircut for a second? Can we just look at it? It's interesting, and you and I have spoken a little bit about this, and without obviously getting into what it means, let's just get into the reaction about people trying to figure out what it means. And you knew that there'd be some reaction to this because what does it mean? Does it mean, Maggie's dead? Does it mean something else because she's done this new transformation? So what was it like when you started seeing people freaking out about your hair?
Without saying when it happened, the people that I talked to about it, without saying who they were or where we were, we definitely knew there was going to be some sort of reaction. I mean, you can't sort of like, I feel like the boys can't shave without somebody saying, wait a minute, there's something changed in the apocalypse. But it's funny. I mean, this is in the midst of like when we think that Glenn is gone and then Steven's still coming to set to film later things. He literally is carrying 2 umbrellas and wearing a dressing gown that covers his clothes so you can't guess who it is. So we kind of get this like idea of how astute, everybody's being about stuff. So no, it was funny. I had definitely more explaining to do than I thought that there would be, and there was a lot of in the comic, people's hair changes. I'm not saying which characters. I'm just saying that people's hairs get changed in the comic, but that might give you a clue. But it's
all right.
Okay.
She's not going to tell us. I'm curious what people think. Show of hands. Who thinks this means that Maggie's dying in the upcoming episodes? No. Any hands? No, I see one.
Oh, good.
One. All right. Who thinks that it's somehow related to something that happens on the show? Meaning she's going to get a haircut on the show. We see a lot of hands. Okay, who thinks Lauren Cohan just wanted to cut her hair? So it's a little split. It's a little split between those two things.
Yeah.
So that's good. Look, we're going to get to some audience Q&A in a second. I know they have a lot of Walking Dead questions. But you just had The Boy, a major motion picture come out. And I know then you went to the premiere and you went to watch it. I don't know if any of you saw this movie, but this movie is freaky as hell. What was it like to go watch a movie, a horror movie, with other people? And even though you were there filming it and you know exactly what was happening at every point, were you still jumping out of your chair?
I was jumping. I was actually so much fun because I thought it would be, first of all, because I'm a major scaredy cat, and I will, if people are next to me, I'm watching horror, they will be bruised. Like it's, you have those involuntary punching reactions sometimes. So, but I decided it would be fun because I've never done a horror film and I needed to have the full experience. And people were like clapping when the bad guy dies and cheering and talking to the screen, and I felt like I was at a Rocky Horror Picture Show, and I was so glad that I went and had the experience, and I still jumped, and I knew when the jump scares were coming. So yeah, it was pretty funny.
I was getting a little concerned about Lauren actually because it's about this boy Brahms who's a doll, and they treat it like he's a boy, and scary things happen. And then I saw you like Instagram photos of like you hanging out with the Brahms doll. Like I'm like, I think she's gone a little like too far, a little too method into this.
I wanted to have some fun. I had he and I making smoothies, and because the theme in this film is that this kid like runs the show, and he's not a human, but he's a doll, but he somehow manipulates all these people. And I felt like, you know what, you had your chance, you did it in the movie, and now I'm gonna have my chance, and I'm gonna make you do a bunch of shit. So, but you should have seen the pictures we didn't post. I had him in the gym. I had somebody was at the house fixing the shower, and I had him helping them fix the shower. He was on a ladder. He was holding paintbrushes. It was like, and then I was like, if I post all of these pictures, I'm going to literally look like I have something wrong with me. So, next year.
So, let's see. We've got questions coming right over here. Okay.
Go ahead and raise your hand. We're bringing the mic. We had a question in the first row. Go ahead and stand up for that question.
Hi, thank you for coming. My name is Adam. And watching the show, obviously there's a lot of strenuous physical activity. And then while you're acting, you have to put on the American accent. Now, since the physical part is so exhausting, putting on the American old Western accent, does that get as exhausting as well, having to keep that with, huffing and puffing at the same time?
Sometimes it can slip. It's funny because in the beginning of doing the show, hi Adam, by the way, in the beginning of doing the show, I definitely had this idea that she was so Southern and everything was real cowgirl, and it was like, and then they told me I couldn't, and I was like, oh, no, damn. But it definitely at this point is much easier, and it's sort of synonymous with the environment, and I pretty much stay in that accent the whole time I'm in Georgia all summer, so it's easier too. It's just sort of, it becomes a subconscious thing. Yeah. I have this weird tendency now, if I speak to someone with any accent, after 5 minutes, I start to repeat their accent back to them. So it's a good tool to broaden the repertoire.
It's interesting because there are so many of you, from England or other places, whether, Andy Lincoln, Lenny James, yourself, David Morrissey, for all, Tom Payne, who's playing Jesus, coming up. There's a lot of you.
Yeah, it's funny. It's an invasion. It's a British invasion.
Hi, Michael.
There.
Thank you for coming.
Hello.
2 questions. The first question is, which actor do you lean upon the most for any guidance or any, basically guidance?
Mm-hmm.
And the other question is another female character by the name Lucille joining the cast anytime soon?
One of those things I can't comment on. And the other one, but she's so nasty.
Any mentor or anything on
Yeah,
set?
mentor, not Lucille. Yeah, mentor.
Look it up, people.
Melissa. Yeah, if you don't know, you guys. Yeah, it's on the interwebs via your Google machine. Yes, it's probably. I mean, it has to be Melissa. She's just like. She's literally one of the most incredible people I've ever met. I mean, she's just on a professional level, and as an actor, I find her hypnotizing. And then as a person, she's so silly and so loving and so don't know. She's just a beautiful hippie. She's just a beautiful woman. I love her. Love her.
Hi, Lauren. I'm Nikki.
Hi, Nikki.
As an actor, you've done Supernatural, Walking Dead, and and now The Boy. Is there something about horror/supernatural genre that kind of draws you to it?
It's probably I do really love sci-fi, and like I said, I am a scaredy cat, but I also love these sort of fantasy genres. I feel like you can go a bit further, and I never consciously pursue this stuff, but then the things that I read, these are the ones that I just seem to keep wanting to do. I mean, I just read the script, and it's another supernatural sort of dark film. And I'm reading, and I'm like, when you get to the end of the next season, you're not going to want to do something dark. But I cannot resist it. And I'm just reading, and I'm crying, I'm reading, I have goosebumps, my hair's just like cold. Everything's cold, but I can't resist it. So, yes, I'm doing fun stuff. I'm about to do some indie project, actually. It's going to be really fun. But I love supernatural. I love it.
How you doing?
Good.
I read the comics. I'm a big fan of you, by the way.
Thank you.
And I wondered, in the upcoming struggles in the war, I know you have a lot going on, like you lose a lot and blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm saying? So what's your mindset? How would Maggie describe the other side, the enemy, I guess you would say?
The enemy. Yeah, as you know from the comic and anybody else who reads it, there's a lot of change that comes, and we veer so much, but the tone of change in terms of, finding a new place and Maggie taking on some leadership is something we will explore more as the show progresses, and even within this season, the second half. And that's kind of what, when I was saying to Dalton about the pregnancy sort of giving you the motivation to never take no for an answer and to really fight, it brings out something new in her, and that's something that you'll know from the comic that we do get to explore, is the sort of, she goes head to head with some pretty strong people, and it's a new stage of the Mags. Yes, it's good. Everything else is still stopped.
Well, we've seen her being trained to be a leader. We've seen Deanna training Maggie to be a leader, that's her place. And we know in the comics there definitely is leadership in Maggie's future as well. So we'll see where that goes. Yeah.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, good, how are
So
you?
this question is for I love your acting and stuff like that.
Thank you.
So this on the performing aspect of it. So coming from an actor, do you feel that this was something kind of hard to do? Because I know zombies aren't real, but but do you feel like that's something like they're running at you and you have to act like terrified, but you know that they're not like an actual thing? So how do you feel?
It's interesting because the show has a lot of taxing elements, and the story has a lot of taxing elements, and I think that one thing I probably didn't account for, and that none of us really accounted for, is that it's over a long period of time, and you go back and you do this every year, and you sort of need to really figure out how to let that stuff go, and that's within all realms of acting. It's I think a really important. I don't know how many people here are actors or performers, but it's but it's a skill that I'm still definitely working on, and you don't. Somebody said to me once, it is only acting, but your body doesn't know the difference when you tell it that you've lost this person or that you're grieving over these things, and we never take it too seriously, but it's still wanting to do justice to real emotions and real reflections of loss and life and hope and gain and all of these things. So I think that I know that the zombies aren't real, but the fear that you make yourself feel for the zombies is real, so they are real. Not as real as Santa, but they are real. You're welcome. Great question. Good luck to you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you to everyone for coming, and thank you to Lauren Cohan.
Thanks, guys.
Walking Dead's back Sunday night on AMC.
That we have seen.
Have you had opportunities, because I've been down there and I've seen this with you guys, and you have the stunt doubles on hand to do extreme stuff, but you want to do as much as you can. Have you had people, like producer, be like, no, you're not, I'm sorry, you're not doing this? Like, there are insurance reasons, we need you healthy, we can't get you get hurt, when they make someone else step in for you?
Yeah, sometimes that does happen. I'm thinking The funny thing is that it's in the most benign stunts that I end up hurting myself. So like running up to this platform, there was a little bit of a divot in the ground, and I'm like running and holding this huge rifle and feeling really badass, and then I trip and twist my ankle, and I was like, no, I'm a professional, really. Yeah, so it's sort of in those moments, but that setup was like we were calling that the Mission Impossible of, because there's this and then there's Glenn.
Time traveling DeLorean for a minute. I hope you don't get car sick traveling through the space-time continuum, Lauren. But I want to take you back for a little bit, because you've been on the show for a long time now. You're one of the principal characters, but you weren't there in season 1. So you show up in season 2 at the farm. What was it like for you? Because The Walking Dead was this really huge surprise hit in season 1, and now you're the new kid. And you come in season 2. I'm just curious what that was like for you then joining the show.
After Maggie started on the show, after that, nothing that was written were people. Nobody's audition scenes were actually the scenes that were in the show. And Frank had written the entire season 2, like in advance. And so when we got there, we read the entire season of scripts. But I had never seen the show. I just read these 2 scenes, loved them, was very invested in this character. You know, as soon as you think somebody's safe, something else terrible is. It's almost like a theme.
Right, absolutely. I've noticed that over the past 6.5 years. Laura, in the first half of season 6, it was interesting because you didn't really get to work a lot with some of the sort of OGs. The character's been around a long time. So what was that like, sort of not being around shooting day-to-day with Norman and Steven and Andy and some of those guys?
Yeah, it's been an interesting... the show, the way Scott designs the show, it's like we have a half season that will change pace and change style in the second half. We sort of divide the show, the seasons like that. And it's when we get to the second half of this season, there's so much of the group together again that it's always very gratifying because you've sort of explored different avenues. But yeah, so in short, Maggie has she has a lot to do with Deanna and with Rick on their own, and learns a lot, which ends up applying to the second half of the season. So it's like we build the appetite for seeing people back together again, and then also we have 2 really badass episodes where I get to work with some of the OGs that I've never really worked that much with before. I don't know if you were there. What episode were you there during?
I was there for 10.
10.
Yeah,
no,
it
it wasn't
one.
for that one.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a secret to everybody here. Yeah, but...
Let me take you in my...
and then watched the 6 episodes of the first season on the way over. And then I got extremely nervous because I was like, oh, God, now I'm a fan. I'm not going to be cool in front of these people. It's going to be so hard. And so that was when I really sort of had the experience of, holy shit.
Who was the first person you sort of made a connection with on that set? There were some other new people as well that showed up in season 2. Obviously, the whole Green family. Yeah. Was it one of them, or was it one of the people that had been in season 1?
No, it was Steven and Sarah Wayne Callies were the first people I hung out with when I got there. We went for Korean barbecue, and it was June or July, and it was already baking hot, and I was coming from England, and all I had were flannel shirts and jeans. And the first thing Sarah said was,